That's quite big.
Hello everybody, with the Divergent Universe being updated, that means more rewards and difficulties for us to beat. Unfortunately, beating difficulty 7 and 8 doesn't give us rewards, but hey, who cares, let's beat it anyway. I want to say this difficulty is really hard, so don't feel bad if you can't beat it. The first half of the video will be me going over the mode and what you need, while the second would be me explaining an example run. The first half takes quite a while, so feel free to skip to the run explanation. This guide will be going over, in my opinion, the easiest way to beat the mode for most players, and that's by going Remembrance paired with Break/Destruction. You can also go full Break, which is just as viable, but I'm not going to go over that in this video. If you don't like Break or have Break units, then don't worry, as you can just focus on Remembrance and the other stuff I say. But just know it is exponentially harder with the crit alternative route. Also, I'm sorry if I sound pretty bad, I'm pretty sick right now, my voice is not it. Regardless, I want to give you my tier list real quick of the paths in this mode. This is just my opinion, so keep that in mind. So starting with Remembrance and Destruction, they're OP. 1. These paths deal an obscene amount of damage, and 2. They have built-in sustain with their paths. With Remembrance, enemies get frozen so they aren't a threat, while for Break, broken enemies can't deal damage. Destruction Blessings also focus on defense via Grit in a mode where everything will 1 or 2 shot you, even with shield sometimes. Just know that Remembrance can get hard countered by frozen resist enemies or just enemies with really high effect res. Next is Elation, which can do a lot of damage, especially if you pair it with Erudition, and you can just spam ults and follow-up attacks. One issue is that because you aren't getting Preservation or Abundance blessings, you can become a glass cannon and are super prone to being one-shot. Lastly, Hunt. They have 2 godly blessings which are must-have in any run, but besides that, it is an awful path. Terrible 3-star equations which deal 0 damage in this mode. Here's my run with Bionic Messiah. Okay, so we have a 4500% damage coming right up. This better one-shot this phase. Nope. 4% of his HP. Comparing this to Firefly, who's doing more damage while not even using full destruction blessings, it really says enough. Also, an issue with Hunt is how they don't increase your damage by a lot, amping your damage mostly through attack and crit. If I already have 200 crit damage, another 100% will only increase my damage by 50%, and 200 crit would increase it by 100%, aka doubling our damage. Now, let's see how it compares to Destruction. Well, let's double our damage. Let's triple our damage. Oh, let's double our damage again. Oh, and one more time. There's more, but you get the point. There is Court of Hegemony and Bounty Hunter, but in my opinion, it's just not enough. With that out of the way, let's understand the most important things of this run. I made a quick tier list so you can understand what we're looking for. In S tier, this is the stuff that we need or else the run is bricked. The most important thing is getting the right 3-star equations, which our entire run is dictated around. These things are absolutely game changing and is what allowed me to do what you saw in the beginning. But to be able to use them, we need blessings which activate said 3-star equation. Some blessings are also crucial to the run, which I'll talk about later. In A tier is super useful things during the run. Cosmic Fragments are basically our counter to bad RNG because the rerolls are so important. Next would be the weighted curios, which some can be game changing such as for Break, but not getting the right ones isn't a run ender. And same goes for normal curios too. And lastly, levels and artifacts don't matter too much as they will give you some if you're under leveled or don't have any artifacts. Now that you understand what's important, let's talk about what we're looking for. Starting with the 3-star equation, the one we need is Silent Hunter. This requires 7 Remembrance and 5 Hunt blessings to activate. Now, what does it do? Well, basically, if the enemies are dissociated, they stop taking damage and get this tally above their head. This records all break or crit damage, so it won't tally stuff like dot, aftertaste, quake, or non-crit damage. Once the tally reaches 100 or it's the enemy's turn, this will blow up based on how much damage you did to it. And the more enemies that are dissociated, the more a chain reacts and amps up the other explosion's damage. Enemies that enter the field also have a very high chance to just start dissociating. As you saw in the beginning, it is OP as heck. So where do we get these 3-star equations? Well, we get them by beating the first boss of the run, which will guarantee a 3-star equation. Even if it's not Silent Hunter, it's okay because we can reset by going to the cat station. It can be quite expensive, so be ready to spend your cosmic fragments. You generally would only have one 3-star equation throughout a run unless you get fairly lucky. And though you generally don't need more than that 3-star equation, we can actually get more from occurrences such as the 3 Little Pigs, Flea Market, or a con job. If you do plan on getting more, there's only 2 of note for the run that we want. The first is the new equation Mausoleum of Scars. This equation by itself is terrible and should only be treated like an extra. Never get this first. TLDR, it action advances our teammates when deal toughness damage, but that's not really important. What's important is the new thing called Oblivion, which appears in our action bar. When it attacks, it deals damage to the enemies and reduces their toughness by 20. The damage in itself is fairly negligible as shown on screen, but what isn't is how it has a 150% chance to apply dissociation on the enemies. While this can help freeze the boss sometimes, it's not really reliable, so what we're actually focusing on is dissociating the common enemies and blowing them up instead. Lastly will be Voyage Monitor. This costs 7 destruction and 5 preservation blessings, and it can be fairly difficult to activate as Silent Hunter uses completely different blessings. But if you do go down a break route and can activate it too, it's really strong. TLDR, more break damage, you get a shield, and some additional damage. Now let's look at the other notable 1-2 star equations. As you know, Silent Hunter either needs crit or break damage, so I've made 2 charts depending on the route you take. Again, I must say, going the crit route is much harder, but you still can do it. Looking at the chart, I've put color-coded circles based on how important I think some things are to get. Starting with break, we ideally reroll the start until we get Wastelander and then try to get the rest of the break blessings. But if you get the sustaining or remembrance blessings on screen, just go ahead and pick them up too. The same goes for the hunt route, but getting these hunt equations expanded is much more vital to our run compared to the break route because crit doesn't do too well in this mode. When starting with this route, we will just keep resetting until we get the bounty hunter equation for that extra damage. Feel free to take a screenshot of these charts if you need a reminder on what to snag during the run. Moving on to the weighted curios, we get 2 of these when fighting the first 2 bosses, and can get 2 more from occurrences like Lava and the Knights of Beauty. If you have the option to get one, always try to get it. When going for break, ideally go for Divine Visage and the Stake if possible, but if it's not there, then the sustaining options are really good too. Speaking of the sustaining curios, the Silent Song is really strong and can let you survive 1 or 2 more hits. Excess Nutrition also does this too with an overheal mechanic, but it only lasts to the end of the turn. And honestly, crit doesn't have really good options when it comes to weighted curios, so you'd actually want to go for the sustaining curios if you're doing a crit remembrance run. Moving on to the blessings, there are 3 blessings which are crucial to our run and some other good ones I'll get to. These 3 blessings will be Innocence, Fooly, and Sovereign Skybreaker. The first 2 will allow us to trigger dissociation, while Skybreaker is super important as it allows us to go multiple times. The bosses usually spawn multiple enemies, and if you don't have extra turns to break and freeze the enemies, you can get instantly deleted by someone like Curios who goes like 10 times in a row. Next, I want to just go over our really useful blessings in general. Starting with Erudition, these blessings all increase ult damage, which is super useful when you're going down the crit route. The 3 we're looking for will be the one that heals you when you ult, the one that prevents a one-shot, and also the one that grants you 60% energy when you start combat. And if you level that one up, you can start with 100% energy. Subliminal Sensation may be super vital in surviving the initial attacks if you need your ult to say heal or shield, because the enemies are so fast. Next is Propagation, which has 2 blessings of note. Conjunctiva will let our supports become very tanky, and Skilled Wings lets our units make up some of the speed difference against very fast enemies. Elation doesn't have anything to help us for our run, so I'll be moving on to Abundance. If you are using a healer, there are quite a few blessings which would be helpful for your run. The 3-star one lets our single target healers like Gallagher to do a team-wide heal. The rest mostly just increase survivability, but Candlelight Radiance can help our crit damage dealers squeeze out just a bit more damage. If you have a shielder instead, we just pick the ones that focus on sustained rather than the quick damage focused ones. If you are going the crit route, there are some blessings which increase crit rate and damage if you are shielded. But going from left to right, Macro Segregation lets our shield stack, the 3 blessings in the middle help us sustain, and the ones on the right gives a shield if we're hit, or just gives a shield after our turn. Now moving to Hunt. TLDR, just get as many as you can as a Hunt player, but not if you're doing Break. The only one which is useful for general purpose would be Burst and Chase, which can be really helpful with SP in this mode, letting certain characters do an extra basic attack. When talking about Remembrance, also just get as many as you can. The main ones to look out for in Remembrance would be Dizziness and Primordial Hardship, which greatly increase our damage as it works like vulnerability. Hesitance would help our survivability, and Chronic Ruin will only help freeze the second plane bosses, as the third plane ones don't have any freeze resist, just super high effect resist, and CC resist too. Nihility has one blessing which could be considered a must-have, and that's Blind Vision, which makes it easier for us to freeze enemies. The other three is mostly for break teams, especially Night Beyond the Pyre, which the break efficiency is pretty huge. Lastly, Destruction. Most of the blessings are actually really useful, but basically just go for anything that involves Break, Super Break, and Grit. As you can see on the screen, I just choose my sticker to tell you which ones I thought were the best. The most notable one in my opinion, which has saved so many of my runs, would have to be Disciplinary Flicker, and especially when using Sustainless Firefly. This one can potentially help you not get one shot and make it nearly impossible for low damaging moves to kill you, as it would just keep healing you back to 35%-ish HP. Finally, with that done, I'll quickly go over some curios I really like to use. Laurel Crown is honestly a must-have in this mode. This is your get out of jail free card when you decide to fight the Mirror Maiden or the second plane boss and proceed to just get one shot. Rupert's Lever I know isn't the most popular pick, but it's greatly helped me expand my equations while saving me a lot of money. It's only sometimes thrown away nice blessings, but it hasn't been that often. The new Spinning Top is super strong for break and will let you essentially instantly break the common enemies that most bosses spawn. The Gunpowder, Ashes to Ashes, and Faith Bond are super nice miscellaneous curios which allow you to potentially get a good weighted curio, upgrade more blessings, and be able to reset more. Written in Water is also pretty cool and can really save your run if you get unlucky in a domain which took all your HP and technique points. I want to quickly talk about matchups for the strategy. So in the first plane bosses, there's nothing too special as they're just elites. For the second plane bosses, if you fight the Deer and Svarog, it's pretty free as they summon minions pretty consistently. Now, if you fight Kafka, Sleepy, and especially YanKING, you might be cooked for this strategy. And for the final plane, 3 out of the 5 bosses are literally free. But if you have to fight Cirrus, who's just really hard, or Sam who doesn't summon enemies, you may get cooked, but it's doable as you'll see later. Finally, with that out the way, I'll just go over a run and explain how you should be playing it. Hopefully this visualization does a better job than me just saying go occurrences, reset blessings, get money, blah blah blah. So starting the run, I generally re-roll until I get Wastelander because I'm going down the break route with Firefly. After which we're presented with the blessing options, and I generally choose either the left or the middle one as I don't want to spend too many fragments on re-rolling, even though the extra blessing is pretty nice. After which we just enter combat and there's nothing too special about this. Now choosing the blessings, I generally choose the one that's best for my path, but for the 3 I'm about to get, as you'll see, there's nothing too good, so I just choose the highest rarity one instead so I can just re-roll that later. Unless there's a really cool one like Night Beyond the Pyre, then I'll go for that instead. For the domains I usually choose, I go into the blue ones and never combat, and for occurrence specifically, I just see it as high risk, high reward. For the bugs occurrence, I just chose the one that gave us blessings just because blessings for the win generally, but sometimes depending on where you're at, you may want cosmic fragments instead. For the architects, both are really nice options, the fragment and the curio, and depending on how my run is, I may choose a cosmic fragments if I just need a reset because I don't have enough blessings for my path. But for this one, I chose the curio and I got something really nice. Wealth is also fairly nice as it gives you 400 cosmic fragments, and sometimes the gambling actually works out pretty well. For this device, it's really nice as you can't necessarily lose because you always win something, so even if you get the cosmic fragments, you don't lose that much. Now, the one that does suck is the slot machine where it has the different paths. That one I usually do only like twice, or if at all, but yeah, this one is much better than that. Now that I'm at the workbench, I have a lot of blue blessings that I picked up from earlier that, aren't that useful for me. So I just go ham resetting them. For the 12 monkeys, it's completely useless for what we're doing, and thankfully we get disciplinary flicker, which is super nice. This erudition one is also fairly useless, and we get the I don't go for that? I don't, okay. This propagation one also is completely useless for what we're doing, so when resetting it, I just choose the one that's useful for our equation. I upgraded Quasar Meltdown and Tide of Devastation as to increase my break damage, which will really help for this battle. There's nothing too interesting because, again, it's the first plane, it's not too difficult, and with Firefly, I just kind of breeze through it, getting 10,000 points. As you can see, we don't get Silent Hunter, but it's fine because we can just re-roll it later. I get Sovereign Skybreaker, which is super huge as I would have re-rolled until I got this later. We get Silent Song, which is super nice as mentioned in my video. I really wanted to go for the left one because I haven't unlocked it yet, but I know the Walker of Scorched is super useful for me, so I chose that one instead. For the blessings, none of them were useful, so again I just chose the highest rarity one. And Fortune Glue is always nice, so yeah. So now it's time to overwrite the equation. And unfortunately we don't get it the first time. But thankfully we get it on the second. And there's also Voyage Monitor, which my brain wanted to get, but that's not what we're doing for this run. So after the first plane boss, there's usually the store domain, which I almost never go to because I'm probably pretty poor. I don't really recommend going to them unless you have like a lot of cosmic fragments, like maybe 600 or 800 plus. So your only option is either adventure or occurrence. And adventure is super nice, but I like going to occurrence just because it's like pretty high risk and like it could potentially be super high reward too. But here I decided to go adventure just because my luck hasn't been the best recently and I'll see what I can get. Thankfully it's against the little piggies and I kind of just two-shot them with Firefly. Getting 3 stars is very nice because you get cosmic fragments, a blessing, and 2 curios. Here I choose Remembrance because Silent Hunter isn't expanded yet. Of course, I go Occurrence again. And then for a shopping channel, I decide to play it safe and get the random blessings rather than the cosmic fragments. Next, we have a choice between the blessings and the cosmic fragments, but the way I see it is that you can buy blessings for cosmic fragments, and then on screen there's a little chart saying the conversion price, but I end up getting the blessing instead because I don't currently have a lot. So here is the IOU dispenser. It's kind of a waste occurrence, but it's whatever. And here's the big screw up of my run. I thought it was gonna be super free, and I was like, oh yeah, 2 blessings and 3 curios, let me just clean this guy up real quick. And unfortunately, I fought this guy for like 7 minutes because he just would not die. This fight took so long that the enemies were about to go berserk too. But we beat it anyway, got our 2 blessings and some curios too. I was looking to see if there was any good curios to fix, but unfortunately it was just the IOU dispenser one, and that one's pretty bad, so I end up picking the lever one instead, which actually turned out pretty good for the run. So I was contemplating whether to go adventure or occurrence, but I was just like, well, we can't get too far if we keep playing it safe, so we went occurrence instead. And then with the lever device, it actually expanded Silent Hunter, which was pretty cool. But as you can see, there's Cosmic Crescendo, and you can't pass it up. Usually, I think it goes like pretty even, like 50% good and 50% bad, but this time it was actually mostly good, which is actually really cool. Okay, besides the doll is actually so bad, and you'll see later how it just grieved some by run so hard. Collab product, I'm pretty sure is a new occurrence, which I went to Google to see what it was, but they didn't really explain it. But it seems every time you pull, there's a chance to get like a reward. I remember getting a curio one time, But I do it twice here and don't really get rewarded for it, so I just kind of stopped. And as you can see, unfortunately it is YanKING, but whatever. Now that we're at the heat station, we first see if there's any equations to overwrite, but thankfully there's not, so we move on to blessings. When overriding blessings, we of course get rid of the obvious one, so right here we get Night Beyond the Pyre, which is super awesome. Next, Vesticle, this won't really help me, so we get Firmness instead, because we should get some shield from our Preservation blessings. And then of course we upgrade Night Beyond the Pyre, and then the other Remembrance one here too. Of course, we get rid of the Abundance one, which we don't really need, but there's nothing good, which kind of sucks, so we just get a throwaway one. We do it again, and we get the Destruction one, which is pretty nice, but my big brain past self was like, you know what, let's go again, and thankfully, we get Innocence, which is actually pretty huge. I wanted to do Catalyst, but it was getting too expensive, so I was like, it's whatever, and then I just decided to go fight. And now we fight YanKING. There wasn't anything too interesting in the first phase, so I just skipped to the second one. Here we're about to see why Sovereign Skybreaker is so strong, and especially with Firefly, because we're able to just implant fire weakness on the swords and basically just instantly break them. They're actually really tanky too, and if you don't have the weakness implant, they are a bit difficult to destroy, but again, you know, Firefly, she's able to just delete them. And when you break them, it actually chunks YanKING by a lot, which is super helpful during the fight. Something really funny is, as you saw, that YanKING also got boxed. And in his final phase, YanKING summons his swords again, but thankfully using Sovereign Skybreaker and Firefly, we easily just delete all the swords, and then we can just go for YanKING himself. This fight only took 7 minutes as opposed to the 13 when fighting the Swarm, so it really says a lot on how hard those certain bosses are. For the excessive conversion, there's nothing too much of note besides seeing the true power of Remembrance. Memo Snatcher actually helps us out later when I switch to Gallagher. The 3-star blessings aren't that good, so I just choose a random one. For the way to Curio, I just choose Road to Comments just in case our Harmony Trailblazer breaks someone. So there wasn't anything too interesting from the chest, so I sped this part up. And once again, we just go into Occurrence. So it seems because all our equations are expanded, the Lever Curio is just throwing away random Curios now, which kinda sucks, but it's not too impactful. For Fortune Telling, it's either a good or bad effect, and I wanted more money, so I chose the Cosmic Fragment option. And unfortunately, I didn't get rewarded for it, but it's not too bad. We do get 2 blessings though to make up for it, which is pretty okay. For the Cosmic Merchant, I decided to get the Curios because I don't really need any blessings right now. But unfortunately, we don't get anything too cool, but that's just how it be sometimes. We do 2 more occurrences, and then we go into the Respite domain. Again, we lose another blessing, but it's not too bad. And now we can go to Schoolyum to see what he has. He only has 1 blessing for us, which is Cleft, but that's perfectly fine. And now on to the Cat Station. We of course go to override our blessings, which there is one, which is the critical boost one, which we don't really use. So rerolling it, we again, don't get anything too good, so we try again. And thankfully we get fully, which is super important. After that, we go for the Voyage Blessing, and we get the Destruction one, which gives us Grit, which is very nice. And after that, we get rid of this Nihility one, and we get Hell is Other People, which I really love. And now time to enhance our blessings. Of course, we need to upgrade Innocence, and after that, I personally love Hell is Other People, so I chose to upgrade that instead. And now it's time to fight the boss. It's Sam. Unfortunately, there's hardly any summons for us to abuse, so it makes the fight super difficult. So yeah, for the first run, I just was not gonna do a sustain list. Sam just hurt way too much. Thankfully we could retry, so I decided to put Gallagher on, so I have to sustain now, which is much better. So my second run was going pretty well, but then Firefly locked on to Firefly, and then at that point it was kind of over, because yeah, she kind of got one shot. I thought I could clutch it up right here by ulting with Firefly, but unfortunately, yeah, that happened. And on to run 3! Starting the battle, we can see that the enemies on the side are dissociated, and thankfully we can just use all our ults here.
Every petal, all will be swept away by the wind.
After doing that, I want to go for the guys on the side, but unfortunately that stupid Curio makes me target Sam instead, breaking both at the same time. It's not too big of a deal, but it's okay. But here we can see that the dissociation is absolutely chunking, but we're only able to get that like twice every phase, which really sucks. And then moving on, I just want to note on how like none of my characters took that much damage besides Gallagher. Anyone with a shield literally took like 200 or 300 damage, which is pretty insane. And then here, Sam got frozen, which I thought was pretty funny. So rather than doing Gallagher's basic attack, I just opt to save it for Firefly so she can get her extra turn. But as you can see, my break did like no damage. So I'm on the second wave again, and then my Gallagher, he missed 2 basic attacks, but it's fine because he was actually able to freeze Sam, which I thought was, you know, pretty interesting as well. Again, we're targeting the little guys on the side, so we're able to abuse Silent Hunter. We'll let Homing Trailblazer finish off the second phase. Okay, but like, look at that damage, that's kinda crazy. So again, abusing Silent Hunter, break the guys on the side.
Life's like a good brew, my friends. Indulge yourselves!
I was actually kind of worried that my Gallagher and Firefly would miss their targets, which is what bricked my first run. Thankfully, Sam, when they did her final lock-on move, it was on a Harmony Trailblazer and instead of Firefly, because that would have honestly ended the run. But as you can see, Harmony Trailblazer barely lives because of our blessings, which is actually super dope and pretty much saved the run. And for a fitting end, Sam gets dissociated, and then we're just gonna charge it up, and they're gonna get absolutely nuked. And that's that. I hope this video helped you out on your runs, and especially for those who are trying to clear difficulty 8. I originally wanted to upload this video on Sunday, but I got a pretty bad fever and it was uploaded on Monday instead. My next video should be about Rappa and then a personal project of mine afterwards, like my Jingliu video. But besides that,